In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this totally gorgeous, shimmery watercolor Christmas card. So please keep watching if you want to see how to do it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to provide you with this little template of the word Noel. So click on the link in the description below if you want to download it, or you can just print something similar out on your own computer. We're just going to use this as a template for the lettering because we want it to be nice and precise. So I'm just going to take my light board and that template that I've printed out, and I'm going to trace the lettering onto the front of my card. To make the actual card, I've just taken a sheet of 9x12 watercolor paper. I've cut that in half, and then I've folded that in half to make the card shape. I'm just using a light blue pencil crayon to trace the letters right onto the center of the card. I prefer using pencil crayons because they do allow the color to kind of blend in with the paint more in case you can't get it erased completely. So once that is done, you're going to tape down your card onto a board. I'm just using the back of the inside of a picture frame. I know that it's kind of hard to see the lettering, but trust me, it's there. For the project, we're going to be using a masking fluid. You can pick up masking fluid at any art store. I got this one actually on sale at Walmart. And what this is going to allow us to do is block off any areas that we want to keep intact. So any areas that we want the white paper to show through, the masking fluid is just going to allow us to preserve that area. I actually have a whole video on masking fluid in my watercolor workshop. If you guys want to check that out, the link is below as well. So I'm just using a thin paintbrush for this. You're gonna want a paintbrush that you're not too attached to because it will possibly get a little bit wrecked using the masking fluid, but I'm just going to paint that on inside of the lines from the sketch that we've done previously. And when I do this, I really want to make sure that the edges are as crisp as possible because again, once we peel this off, that's going to show through. So any sort of errors that you've made or any bumpy lines, they're gonna show. So just make sure to take your time with this part and really get it on there and get the edges as crisp as possible. And once that's on, we're gonna let it dry completely. It should be dry to the touch. It might be a little tacky, but that's totally normal. I'm gonna use indigo blue for the background. And all I'm gonna do here is wet the entire background just with water. And I'm using a large brush to do this. I just want the paper to be damp, not soaking wet, but just damp and shiny as you see here. Then I'm just gonna randomly start applying that blue color. All I wanna do here is make the background sort of a blue wash effect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can take your time with it if you do want it to be more perfect, but I wanted it to kind of be a bit darker in the center. So I'm just gonna play around with adding more blue to the water as I go. And when you're doing this, just a tip to keep in mind is you don't want to keep adding water to the paint in your palette because you already have water on the paper. So the more water that you add to the paint, you're just going to keep making a big sloppy mess because there's going to be way too much water on the paper doing it that way. So I'm sort of just using the least amount of water as possible in the actual paint pan. And you can see here that the masking fluid just sort of balls up on top. It's not going to affect anything underneath. Once your paint is totally dry, you can go ahead and peel off that masking fluid. This part is super satisfying. Different masking fluids perform differently. This one thankfully just peels off in one big strip. You can just grab it at a corner and just pull. There are other brands of masking fluid that are a little more difficult to get off. You might have to use an eraser to sort of erase it off. I'm sure you've seen me do that in a couple other videos as well. But for now, this one peels right off. I'm going to leave links in the description below for all the supplies that I've used here. If I can find this exact masking fluid, I will leave that as well. You can kind of see what I mean here about if you don't have super crisp edges. Some of my letters have a little bit of a fuzzy edge, but that's okay. It's gonna add to the whole watercolor effect in the end. So I've just mixed up a little bit of sap green, tiny bit of Hooker's dark green, as well as raw umber. And I've just created sort of a muted green shade. And now I'm just gonna start wrapping some leaves around the letters. I want some of these to go on top of the letters, some to go behind, just to sort of make it a whole unified piece of art. So I started off doing this freehand, and then I realized it would be way easier if I sort of mapped it out beforehand. So you can see now that I've got some pencil lines going, and I've just sort of positioned my leaves where I want them ahead of time, just so now I can go in and fill them in without making any mistakes. So I've got some different sized leaves. I've got a couple different shapes and also a couple stems for little berries that we're gonna be adding later. And again, I have just added some of those leaves on top of the letters and some coming from behind. For this, I am using my round pointed number 6 brush. I'll leave a link to this one below. It's one of my favorite brushes of all time. So I'm just going to continue adding those. You guys can follow along or sketch out where I have placed mine if you want to copy it. Now I'm gonna take my gold watercolor. This is my favorite gold watercolor. It's by Core Watercolors, and it is so pretty. You've probably seen me use it before, especially in last year's holiday card tutorials, but it's beautiful. You don't need a lot of water. If you don't have a gold watercolor, you can also just use like a gold marker, one of those gold Sharpies or something along those lines. Now we're gonna add a little bit of detail to the centers of some of these leaves. So I'm going back to that indigo color, and I'm not using too much water with this time because I want it to be more opaque. And I'm just gonna add little veins and details to some of these leaves. I'm not gonna do all of them, just a couple of the fatter looking ones. So you can see here, now that I've zoomed in, exactly what I'm doing. I'm just creating a line down the center and then little lines shooting off of that. And again, just being selective about which leaves I decide to do this to. Once I'm done with the indigo, I'm gonna go back in with the gold, and I'm gonna do the same thing to some of those leaves, just adding more detail. You can see in the next shot how it turned out. So with all of that complete, I'm going to tear off this tape, and you can see the final effect. My battery actually died when I was doing the gold details, but you can see from this shot here what I did. I just did some single lines on some of them, and then some of those veins and everything on some others. So this is the final Christmas card. I think it turned out super cute. I love the gold detail. I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out, and it also lets me know that you want me to continue making these holiday card tutorials. Also subscribe if you haven't. I will be putting out more card tutorials in the very near future. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.